Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we've got quite the video to talk about today. It's no lie at all that the Wuthering Waves space has been under some fire recently due to the fact that there have been some content creators coming out and saying that you can't do things like criticize the game, criticize the mechanics, criticize anything at all when it comes to Wuthering Waves. Otherwise, you're going to get brigaded, bagged on, have yourself canceled by the community. And what I wanted to do today was actually react to a video, because what this video does is, you can just look at the thumbnail over here, it directly critiques the exploration in Wuthering Waves, and it has an overwhelmingly positive response. And so, I believe the implication here is that Gacha Smack is making an amazing critique. He's absolutely spitting. So why don't we go ahead and give it a bit of a listen?
Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to have a very insightful discussion as to why exploration inside of a gacha game will forever remain shallow. Now, there is a caveat to this, and that is when the main story quest is updating, that's when you get the absolute best exploration experience. And the reason that is because many of the world building aspects are tied to that MSQ progressing.
I think the biggest example of this that I can think of when it comes to Wuthering Waves in particular is 100% the 2.2 Avenolium quest that we had in Wuthering Waves. That one had the exploration essentially tied to the story progression. And by the time you were done with the quest, you basically had about 80 something percent of the map already done. And clearly there were like some other like mini games and stuff that you could do, but it was very like objective focused stuff from there. So yeah, I think it checks out completely, at least this first point that I'm hearing right now.
Not only that, but the music, ambiance, and vibes, new music, ambiance, and vibes, map expansion, all of it's tied to the MSQ progressing. But my problem with this is it's very linear, controlled, and it doesn't give off a genuine adventure. The adventure is very much finite and tied to that update patch. And most importantly, once it's done, it leaves you with a world that feels very bland and empty. And I want to explain precisely why that is, what elements are lacking, and why this is the experience and case.
I think the one thing that might be like a little bit of like a counterpoint that I'm just like thinking about right now, and I hope it's something that gets woven into the discussion, I'm 90% sure it will be, are like the world quests that you have after like the main story progression is like done. Think about like 2.0, 1.1, those really big new areas. They typically have like some world quests that are associated on the side that help like breathe a little bit more life into like the lore of like the actual geographical regions. So I hope that's something that he talks about.
Now, firstly, I want to talk about the big pro of the aforementioned things. They all tie into only one component of exploration. They don't make it up entirely. That is world design. You'll notice that gacha companies do not hold back on their budget allocated to world design. That's because it's the biggest component that can pump fake the viewer into believing there's more to offer. Look at how beautiful our world is.
I hope he talks about how empty Septimont is. That's a point of critique that I've made about Septimont multiple times in multiple videos, is that the flight and exploration and stuff like that, there's so many regions in Septimont that literally have like 30 seconds of flight time in between anything meaningful. It could be like 20 seconds between enemies. You look at the bottom right corner of the Septimont map, there's nothing there. There's nothing in a lot of places. And it kind of just makes you feel like, damn, the world looks really good. The world sounds amazing. But there's just kind of, it is empty in a lot of places.
Look at that music, that ambiance, those vibes. Man, those stunning visuals look great, don't they? I bet it's a whole lot to explore. Not really, but they do in fact do a damn good job, don't they? In fact, I dare say the world design in these gacha games is not only the best in its genre, it's the best, probably debatably, in the entirety of the gaming industry. Sometimes I take a look at these things and I go, holy shit, I don't think I've seen a better atmosphere than the one before me right now.
You know, when he goes through these like wide panning shots that show up in like those geographic previews, I can't say that he's wrong. Yeah, this looks pretty fucking hype.
However, as we see many times in gaming trailers, just because it looks good doesn't mean it is good.
What I really love about this critique is that it makes sure to give credit where credit is due as you're diving into and talking about the problems. I think one of the things that people seem to really not recognize when it comes to critiques about a game is that the most well-received ones are the ones that feel like they have like a good overall well-rounded perspective on the entire ordeal, right? You can talk a lot about straight up like what is negative, and sometimes, right, gacha games make updates that are so bad, or mechanics that are so bad, that there's only negative things to say. Like Miasma in ZZZ when it was first introduced. They made changes to Miasma on their new bosses, and then it actually has like a meaningful gameplay impact that makes sense. And so when Miasma was introduced in ZZZ initially, I took a fat shit on it because it was actually awful. Then they reintroduced it with a new boss that actually interacts with it meaningfully, and it makes sense, and it doesn't feel like shit, and there are actual real meaningful counters to it that you can implement in gameplay, and I gave it its props. I gave it credit where credit is due. And in this situation, right, I think Gacha Smack is giving credit where credit is due before diving into the issues, and I think it sets up the audience really well.
Let's start off with monumental problem number 1, treasure hunting. One of the biggest motivating factors and incentives to go on an adventure in the first place is not to find the One Piece, but to get some goddamn gear, be it armor or weapons, or maybe unlocking a cosmetic skin, abilities that you can use that permanently are added to the arsenal of the character you're using, or maybe it's ability that you can use exclusively in that area to overcome mobs, or allies in and of themselves to take with you on your adventure. And lastly, hidden discoverable places where maybe you get a nice little Easter egg, which to be fair, that part does exist in gacha games, although quite scarce, it is there.
Think of like the Virgil chair, right? At the top of this one mountain in Wuwa 1.0, I think it's directly to the bottom right, like the bottom right of Jinzhou. There's like that big mountain and then like the Virgil chair at the very top.
Sometimes you can,
and that's with no flight. You had to climb all the way up there, and it wasn't that hard because you run up walls, but like that's kind of like what you had to do to find it.
get a hidden area though, and maybe you have some special connection with the
And then the leaps of faith in Septimont, right, where you do the Assassin's Creed jump. Yeah, those two.
character, and if you never went to that area, you never would have had the interaction. These are the kind of things that make up treasure hunting in a game for a very positive explorative experience, and the reason they don't exist in a gacha game, well, that would cut into the heaping amounts of revenue that they bring in month over month. They can't add armor and weapons to your explorative experience because they're selling you those things inside of their microtransactions. They can't add skins in there because that, well, they just don't want to do that. They'd rather sell that to you as well. Abilities affect the very inherent design of a gacha game because abilities are sold to you through selling the characters to you.
And what they do instead is they simply give you the resources so that you can start pulling on those banners, except for I guess the skins because they're all premium currency.
All of the things that make up a very fun experience for treasure hunting is tied to microtransactions and their monetary incentives. And another reason you can't obtain gear through exploration is because that would clash with the very idea and concept of a stamina consumption system.
I think that this is like, technically, I feel like the whole like exploration piece and like equipment, it is, you can talk about like the unlockable weapons kind of showing up in the events instead. You all know about like the cat sword, right? That you got from Wuthering Waves 1.4, and then like the Somnoir event, right? That we had where like Dreamlink and all that stuff was introduced. That gave the Somnoir sword. Then you got the fishing event for the Phoebe weapon. It's like those things, right? Where the kind of like free unlockable stuff was like a bit more limited, and it was also like tied to the events rather than the exploration. So it's not that they're not there or that like everything is monetized. It's just not built into the at least the gameplay loop of the exploration. It's kind of just you get resources and you get pulls, which can kind of get you the things that he's talking about, but it's a bit roundabout.
And no, a stamina consumption system isn't designed to prevent you from burning out. You're giving them too much credit. It's designed to encourage you to refresh to spend money. Gacha developers know good and well how impatient gamers can be when they want to have good gear. And so they put that stamina system in there because they know you're going to run into that wall and go, damn it, I want to farm some more and I want to get my gear now. Guys, one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in the realms of exploration was from Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10. And that was discovering legendary weapons and summons for my characters. Oh my God. And you know what was cool about this is before the game got fully fleshed out and we freaking giga no-lifed it and discovered it all, and now the guides became accessible on the internet, you had to go and find these things. You would get a magazine in the mail that would show you where you could buy it with the game's purchase, and it would show you what the weapons look like, but it wouldn't tell you where they were, right? Or it would show you what the summons look like, but they wouldn't show you where they were. And so you were deeply motivated before beating the game or even after beating the game to go out in the world and explore and find these legendary weapons and these legendary summons that were incredibly powerful and incredibly unique to your gaming experience.
And the best that you kind of get in Wuthering Waves is 100 tuners. The best that you get is like, oh, additional sequence nodes, additional dupes for your MC, refinements of Arrow Rover's weapon. I mean, in kind of like a similar vein, those are pretty nice. Those are cool because the MC in Wuthering Waves is actually not a steaming pile of dog shit like they are in Genshin Impact. Like, who here was excited when their Pyro Traveler finally became C6? Who was excited about that? Who was hyped about that? Nobody, right? Nobody. I see what he's talking about, right? He's talking about like those luxury premium rewards, that kind of stuff, right? And a reward and incentive system is one of the best ways for people to start engaging with the world. But when those incentives are sort of like at odds and they're opposed to getting like the legendary tier weapons in a gacha where they're on banner and stuff like that, it's a bit of a conflict for the devs. However, though, I can kind of see where the point does get a little bit muddled with like the release or the unlocking of like a new version of Rover, right? Where, let's be honest here, you had to play the story and in turn do the exploration in 2.2 to be able to unlock Arrow Rover. And then when that sequence happens, when you like are playing like all three Rovers at once in the fight against Fleur-de-Lis, it's like a pretty hype moment. It's a pretty sick moment that's like really cool. And I think it's one of the reasons for why people rated the 2.2 exploration and just 2.2 as a whole so high. Because that payoff that we got from unlocking Arrow Rover, doing all of that, having the badass fight, the cutscene afterwards, was like, in a lot of ways, I think it drew feelings back to like those old school RPGs. I think somebody mentioned over here character skins. Rover skins that get unlocked for 100% of your region. That's a great way of going about it, right? Because main character skins should always be free, in my opinion.
This is something that will never, ever exist in a gacha game. This is also why people love exploring in Elden Ring. Elden Ring offers you all kinds of weapons and armor for you to unveil as you go through your journey.
One of the biggest reasons for why Elden Ring is so replayable is the fact that you can like remember where certain really good boss drops are, bum rush them at the start of the game, and then like feel overpowered, right? Y'all all know that if you like rush to Caelid at the start in Elden Ring, you can get like that katana that like scales with int, and then like it like shoots like it's like you get like the Virgil sword, right? You can unlock that shit almost immediately in Elden Ring and then start like feeling like a badass, right? Moonveil right off the rip if you're good enough at the game, and then like have like a cracked playthrough. That brings like a whole new dynamic. 1,000,000%.
And there's even rich amounts of lore to pick up, and you never know who the hell you're going to run into, and you have the option of killing them or joining them. These things never actually exist inside of a gacha game because, once again,
I think a part of it is you can always restart your Elden Ring playthrough. I don't think you can restart your gacha game.
Goes against the very nature of their monetary system. Hence, argument number one of why a gacha game's exploration will forever remain shallow. The next category of exploration I want to delve into next that is lacking is danger, which is kind of compounding on top of treasure hunting. Two references that go to my mind: Final Fantasy XI, the MMO. Anybody who's ever played it will tell you, and maybe you know what, even World of Warcraft as well. But one you will know for sure is probably Xenoblade Chronicles, because all three of them shared that same concept of, as you were exploring,
I have no idea what this game is,
out in that world, that open world, there was a strong chance you'd run into a ridiculously strong mob, and it would clap your cheeks if you dared try to fight it or if you got too close to it. This gave you a thrill of excitement as you were trying to traverse the map and get to wherever the hell you were going.
And you know that that's sort of implemented in Wuthering Waves. It was real in Wu-Wa 1.0. When you found those red mist mobs, I remember a group of like fucking little baby echoes, right? Like the fucking chop chop, the fucking whiff waff, the fucking tick tock. a group of like level 120 versions of those they'd be clapping my cheeks until I was like UL 40 or like UL 50 or 60. But unfortunately, if you're a more veteran player, those red mist mobs are now just like normal enemies to you that have more HP. So they're like mini boss fights instead of these abject terrors that they used to be. And it's almost like, I wonder what it would be like to be able to play Wuthering Waves again in its like on 2.5 as a new player and be able to experience all the dynamics of the newer regions like 2.0 and beyond with like a new player tier account and experience. It wouldn't be the same if I just start up a fresh account with all the gameplay knowledge that I have right now and then go through it. You gotta have like that fresh new player experience in like Rinasida and then seeing like the double chop enemies that are like level 120, right? I would love to be able to experience that again, but I can't like just wipe my memory unless I have a, I don't know, like backflip onto my fucking cranium or something. I don't want to do that for content.
Thing is, if you fought it, there was a chance that you would fail, die, and have to start over. This added to the dopamine of beating it, overcoming it, and potentially getting some insanely rare gear or getting nothing at all. Once again, no danger in a gacha game's open world. Guys, the last thing you will experience inside of a gacha game exploration is danger. All of the challenge is tied into in-game content. None of it exists not only through MSQ progression, but it also doesn't exist in exploration as well. And while we're on the topic, what subcategories go under the word danger?
I guess the thing is, I know there's the local legends in Genshin that were introduced in Fontaine, and they kind of like the red mist enemies in Wuwa. So I guess those are like the counterpoints that I would make to his example over here. But I will admit, you don't get that much for fighting them. There's not that much of a reward. In Genshin, I think you literally get like a chest, right? Do you get a chest in Genshin or do you just get nothing? And I know in Wuwa, you just get like guaranteed echo drops, which can be nice for some people. Oh, local legends only give an achievement? Yeah, no chest, right? I think it's because they have to balance the struggle, right? Where there are going to be players so dog shit at the game, they will never be able to kill the red mist enemies or the local legends. They will never be able to do it. And so having pulls and stuff like that locked behind content that theoretically some players will never be able to do because they're too bad at the game is probably something that they don't want to do because it will like piss some people off, right? If it's locked behind like achievements or stuff like that, I think Wuwa has achievements too. I don't think people view it as that big of a deal.
Well, it would be nice if there were rare boss spawn-ins because that is going to give you a exciting factor that's pretty surprising. And more importantly, it's going to give you that thrill of danger as you're exploring around. Now, of course, you always have the option to run away, but the fact that it can spawn in creates an air of excitement and what ifs.
I think it's a balance of devs being able to reward the players in a way where other players don't feel pissed if they're not able to complete the content. I would love the idea of like roaming world bosses that are able to like drop and give like resources of like some kind. But it's like, then people would be like, oh, well, then you gotta be making sure that you're like playing every single day at all times. And if you like miss the boss when it spawns this one time, then you won't be able to get like this one limited reward that it had. And it's like super predatory, or it's like, oh, you gotta play the game like a job. All of that, right? It's just, man, it's kind of unfortunate. One thing that I would really be interested in seeing the Kuro devs do is implement something like the Steel Path in Wuthering Waves. The Steel Path from Warframe. And what that is it basically like turns the entire, it like resets your exploration and stuff across the entire world and then makes the enemies really fucking hard. Like all of them. Even like the basic mobs. And then it's basically like a reset for like the end game players, and then they kind of get to like have like a super crazy grind, a super crazy struggle, because clearly their accounts are at the point where they're like well invested in stuff. Imagine like level 200 enemies everywhere in the overworld. That could be cool. That could be fun, right? And maybe it's something that Kuro can do to bring some more life back to the open world and give people a reason to go back into it. Because once you're done with exploration, there's not really too much to do, right?
Next one not only adds to danger, but it also adds to the thrill of adventure. And that would be random dungeons spawning into the world map design. I don't know, it can be underneath the ground. It can be a freaking alternate dimension that you ran into on accident with some rare goblin spawns for you to get some very juicy gear.
Goblin spawns.
None of these things can exist inside of a gacha game because, once again, that would involve you getting some gear. And the biggest issue with these lack of qualities existing is it diminishes incentive to explore beyond unlocking the map as merely a checkmark. It makes the activity feel repetitive, mundane, and uninspired. Which, speaking of which, I want to talk about the next problem in these games, which is map interactables. This is one thing that absolutely exists in gacha games, and sometimes it's done decently well, but most times it just feels like, what?
I like all of these features and suggestions that Smack has, right? And I think that one like amazing collaborative opportunity between the community and Kuro Games is to find some way to be able to implement these features or these cool things that are being suggested in a way that A, still provides meaningful rewards to players to give them an incentive to actually do it and not make it feel like a useless side activity, but B, also not be like something that feels like it's forcing people to play, otherwise they're missing out tremendously, right? And I think like the solution, right, is like some sort of like skin or something like that, where it's just like if you miss that one time that the dungeon or the event runs or something, you're still able to like make it up later. It's just, I'm pretty sure we can cook something up, but these are just sort of like the starting ideas.
What am I doing this for? An example that comes to mind is going to be Wuthering Waves when you're jumping on rooftops with the freaking echo that looks like a teddy bear. It's like a game that does this masterfully well is Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or even the second one. If you want to get across that river, you have to build a boat to get across that river. And no, there's no other alternative. You got to build the boat. If you want to reach up to that high altitude spot in the middle of freaking space, you have to create an air balloon to get up there. These are what give real purpose to map interactables. But often at times in gacha games, map interactables are just merely that. You can interact with them, but it's not really necessary in any capacity, unless of course you're doing some puzzle. But the puzzle at the end of it doesn't reside something that's going to be very like enticing to you. It's usually just currency that equates to a speck of dirt.
To be fair, every now and then there's lore bits. That's what that pop-up says.
Map interactables, to me, based off my experience with gaming, should be placed inside of a game primarily to enhance your experience to traverse to certain areas. And
I think it's like a blend of making things too tedious versus making things fun. There's an example of really bad map interactables. And the example that comes to mind when I think of map interactables that suck dog ass is ZZZs. That is the worst example of map interaction I might have ever seen in a video game before. Where what you do is you press R and then press F a varying number of times. And that's the map interactable. You like press R, aim, and then spam the F key. That's what it is. It literally just feels like a chore that makes no sense. And you're kind of just like, yeah, this adds literally nothing to the game. It only makes it more tedious.
And to overcome traversal barriers. But often at times in gacha games, that's not the case. In essence, exploration systems are deliberately designed not to overshadow or replace the gacha mechanic. Developers favor controlling progression and rewards through monetary systems rather than rewarding players fully via exploration. Now, this next one I want to talk to you about is an interesting one because I don't believe it would take away from their monetary incentive at all. In fact, it would only add into the value of the current existing structure and dynamic of a gacha game.
Okay, let's hear the suggestion then.
And that is side quests. Side quests are some of the most worthless fucking experiences you will ever have inside of a gacha game. The primary focus in my mind for a side quest should not just be merely you being a goddamn mailman errand boy dropping newsletters off at everyone's houses. There's no real purpose outside of that, right? Or just doing like jobs that don't really equate to anything. It should be tied in to unveiling sweet lore, unveiled to either the world building or...
I'm pretty sure Gacha Smack likes the world quest then, right? I'm assuming right off the rip. Maybe I was speaking too soon. I feel like he likes the world quest in Wuthering Waves then because they're pretty lore intensive, right?
Or maybe the character development of the characters you're enjoying as you're progressing through the story.
And I feel like even Genshin Impact too.
Side quests should be a means for you to appreciate the game's world building more. Not just, hey, young man, can you go over there and fetch the fertilizer for me on my grass? No, nigga, I don't. I don't want to do that. What the hell does this have to do with the world? This is yet again a massive problem with side quests, and I dare say the majority.
This is the thing, guys. I know what he's talking about now. He's talking about them daily quests in Wuwa. Go find my cat. He's talking about the blue quest in Genshin. Help Timmy with the pigeons. He's talking about those. I get him now. I get him now. He's talking about those blue quests in ZZZ. Oh, God. He's talking about the quests that I have thousands of in ZZZ. My internet is a disaster. The blue quests, not the green ones. He's talking about the blue ones. I get him.
Majority of people probably have their catalog.
Those took 1 minute to finish. Who cares? Why are they in the game? I don't care about doing them. I don't care that they take 1 minute. I literally don't care about them. And you can say the same about a fair number of quests in Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact 2.
Looking like mines. And that is the side quests have racked up so large it's giving your catalog watch list for animes to watch a run for its money. Overall, while initially...
Let's just check the take. On it, actually, I don't need to. I already know. Like, just think about your hangouts in Genshin Impact. Who here had done every single Genshin Impact hangout? Raise your hand. There's nobody here. Everyone knows they haven't done it. Now, I know you all have 90% of your hangouts ready to go in Genshin.
Exploring in gacha games can enhance the world building and the atmosphere. It's generally not a core rewarding gameplay loop. It often serves merely as a backdrop or a mild distraction from the gacha focused progression, limiting long-term engagement and immersion. This design choice is largely driven by monetary incentives restricting meaningful exploration.
My kind of like summary from what I've heard is that exploration is unfortunately playing second fiddle to the gacha monetization system. Instead of being able to have like meaningful, really noticeable rewards tied into the actual gameplay, it's instead you get the resources you need to get the actual rewards tied into the gameplay instead. And it's kind of inherently less exciting to just get like the pulls to be able to pull instead of getting like the resource or the weapon itself, right? And yes, there are situations, right, where you do a quest in Wuwa 1.1 and you get like the blue guitar greatsword that sucks balls and is not used. There's that exploration thing where you go to the very top of the port city of Guishu and you can find a 4-star broadblade that scales off defense. When there's one character in the game that scales off defense, and it's Tao Chi that nobody plays. So it's like the rewards are there, but they're actually dog shit. Imagine if that sword at the top of the port city of Guizhou wasn't Dauntless Evernight, a defense scaling broadblade, but it was, I don't know, what if it was the standard 5-star broadblade? What if it was that? Like, what if you saw an Emerald of Genesis just buried into the fucking ground in the Black Shores, and then you could just loot it and use it, right? Obviously, it would be sick if they did that, but it's also like, are they ever going to do that in a gacha? And that's the thing, right? Shit. I would be excited. I think it'd be really cool, right? If a lot of people talk about, right, getting like free 5 stars, getting stuff like that. I mean, shit. What if they like wove that into like exploration, or they like wove it into like an event where, shit, instead of like going into a claim menu, you unlock that shit in the middle of like a quest, or you unlock that shit in the middle of like exploration, and then they just give out like the free 5 stars stuff that way. That could be an option to do it as well, right? But it's kind of like, you already know that there are like some strings attached when it comes to this discussion. And I think that Gacha Smack is like entirely right over here. But one thing I do like is that he really opens up the discussion over here for opportunities to find some sort of middle ground in the process. And I think that this might be the start of the community, right? Getting a little bit more active when it comes to the feedback forums, getting a little bit more active when it comes to like brainstorming ideas, because oftentimes, right, the best ideas do actually come from the people playing the game, and then the developers implement them. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look at Wuthering Waves' progression as a game across its 1.5 years of launch. So many of the good updates, so many of the good changes have directly come from the community itself, and the developers have cited the community as the reason why they got those ideas and why the game's becoming better. So much for that toxic positivity narrative that certain walnut CCs are trying to spread about the game,
which I find very problematic. Don't get me wrong, there's always a middle ground where we can meet, where they're still gaining heaps of revenue while still preserving the quality.
This is actually not pre-watched, but I do find it crazy that we both are ending on this whole like middle ground take. Not actually pre-watched.
Of the game's overall exploration experience. But alas, gacha games will always remain with a deep budget for world design and a small budget for experiencing the world building itself in its full essence. It's gonna wrap up this video on why I said gacha games will always have a shallow, explorative experience. You guys do comment down below and let me know your thoughts. As always, I strive to invoke critical thought amongst our community. Peace, love, and happiness, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.
I mean, this was an amazing video. I'm just a little bit sad that it hasn't gotten the traction that Gacha Smack videos typically make. But to be fair, it is a bit more of like a detailed critique piece that he doesn't do as often. And so naturally, I think like the audience is like a little bit, it's going to get used to the new type of content, but bro's absolutely spitting here. Bro's absolutely spitting here. And I know he didn't mention a lot of specific stuff in Wuthering Waves. That's because he was pointing out just general issues across games as a whole. You'll notice that he used like a variety of B-roll and stuff, but was kind of just making like general blanket statements across different titles. And then we were able to come in, provide a little bit of glue, or provide a little bit of like reference points to how I think what he's talking about exists in Bubwa, and a little bit in Genshin too. But yeah, I think he's opened up the door for a very, very fruitful discussion moving forward, and we'll just have to see what the community and the devs, right, are able to kind of work together to solve when it comes to Bubwa. At least. Yeah, Genshin could go fuck itself, because you know the devs aren't going to do anything anyway, so I haven't come up with ideas to try to fix the game. So yeah, that'll be that, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, W Gacha Smack, W criticism, and W actually making good points when you're making that criticism. Yeah. Turns out you are allowed to critique Wuwa. So yeah, with that, let me know what you all think. Peace.